Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Full Tank Motorcycle Podcast with me, Rob, from the YouTube channel Moto Bob. And as always, I'm joined by my good friend Tim. How's it going, mate?
Not too bad. As you know, it is, actually, we just finished the TT week, so I'm kind of sad now because I've lost my bit of entertainment for about a year.
Do you know who's not sad, though?
Go on.
The audience. The reason I've put this in the script to talk about it is we had like 5 minutes of just talking about the TT in the last two episodes. Looked at the data in YouTube, everyone just skipped it.
Oh.
I know. So that's the...
All right.
That's no more racing. Don't mix business and pleasure.
Fair enough then, that's me told.
It's the R word.
Yeah, makes sense.
I was thinking though, listening to someone talk about motorcycle racing, if you don't know who the people are, is a bit like when your grandparents start telling you about their friends, isn't it?
So you just inadvertently
like,
both
Bill's
also
not seen Bill for
old.
A few weeks.
You've insulted
it's
my
not
age
a criticism of you, Tim. I think it's just
my
lack of knowledge.
I think it might be that they've skipped it because they don't want spoilers, because they don't want to know what happens, because they're avidly viewing it themselves as well. But yeah, let's move on swiftly then. How's your week been?
Not bad. Just out on the Svartpillen 801 yesterday, which I really did like. I only got an afternoon on it, but hopefully I'll get one for a bit longer soon. But you know how much I like the 701. It's one of my favourite bikes, weirdly. It's irrational. But it is some of the same vibe, just with a better engine and better tech. And it's just really good. The thing that I probably liken it to most is like an XSR 700. What's the one? Like Tribute. You know, the one's a bit Scrambler style, so it's a bit more sat up. It's a bit like that. Road bike, but with high handlebars. And I'm not an urban commuter anymore, or I don't think I fall into that category. But if I was, and which you are, the Svartpillen 801 would be, I think, a filtering weapon.
Well, it is a weapon, yeah. One of my colleagues just recently got rid of their Svartpillen 701, and he loved it. It was a hard one for him to part with, but then it's a bit of a dangerous one because it is so small. It sort of feels like a toy, but it absolutely doesn't perform like one. So you kind of you get a bit too comfortable with it because you think, oh, it's only a little bike, and then it'll just punch out of a standing start, and we're getting through tiny gaps as well. So you can make yourself a bit of a nuisance, and you can ride maybe a little faster. It's encouraging to ride a little faster than you maybe would ordinarily. So.
Well, the 801's got another 30-odd horsepower, so it'd be even more encouraging and daft. But yeah, hopefully get one for a bit longer. It'd be one that you'd probably be keen to come and sample as well. Definitely. If I've got it at the office for a couple of weeks. But as always this week, we're going to go through some of the top news stories in the motorcycling world, including the expected date for the R1300GS adventure, interesting new development at KTM, another interesting announcement from Ducati regarding one of my favourite bikes in their lineup, and we're also going to look at some of the tasty customs that have come out of Wheels and Waves, courtesy of Honda, as well as our regular slots of Comment of the Week and Bike of the Week. And I really like Comment of the Week this week, mate. Now, before we get started though, Tim, I'd just like to say a massive thanks to Readly for supporting the podcast and making it possible. Now, Readly is an app that I've got on my phone. You can also get it on your tablet, and basically gives you access to so many different bike magazines and publications. And it is quite hard to list them all here, but you've got MCN, Bike, Ride, Motorcycle, Sport and Leisure, and many, many more. And also for the occasional times that I'm not reading about motorcycles, which does happen very rarely, there's also stuff like What Car, Autocar, Top Gear, all the mainstream newspapers, and stuff like tech and travel as well. Now, the brilliant thing about Readly is it also gives you access for up to 5 family members on the same account, so you can share it around with your kids and the partner. And also, they've got a whole bunch of different categories and stuff, so it should be easy for them to find something they're into as well. Plus, there's also a 2-month free trial available at the moment, which you can easily cancel once you've signed up. And so basically, you've got nothing to lose. To get the 2-month free trial of unlimited newspapers and magazines, go to readly.com/FTM. That's readly.com/FTM. And I'd really say it is definitely worth a look. There is actually a link in the description of this podcast episode over on YouTube if you don't want to type it out. head over there and take a look, and you'll see the sheer range of publications for yourself. The other thing I'd like to mention as well is the fact that you get their entire back catalogue for each of those publications. So if there is a bike you wanted to read about, or your bike was reviewed a few years back, you can actually go back through the back catalogue, find that particular issue and check it out. And also you've got the option to download them to your device. And so when you're offline and you're traveling, you can still read it and enjoy Readly to its full potential. Like I say, follow the link in the description below to get access to that 2-month free trial, which you can easily cancel. And honestly, we really do think Readly is a brilliant little app, especially if you like those sorts of magazines. So definitely recommend checking it out. Anyway, Tim, let's get stuck into the first story of today. And this is quite an interesting one from Ducati, isn't it?
Yeah, and possibly a sad one. I think it's a sad one for you, because I know you were a fan of it. So basically, this is, I'll break the news to you swift, pull that band-aid off. The Ducati Scrambler 1100 Sport Pro is getting discontinued, I believe, and we cite this from MCN, who've got this story running. So basically, it was the managing director, Fabrizio Cazzoli. Yep, that sounds about right. Thank you. Who's announced that it is going to be discontinued. And two of the main reasons for it are the Euro 5 Plus emissions standards, which I know roughly the sort of information around it, but obviously they're stricter and tighter. And also I think it's more specifically that they leave the sampling, if you like, for longer for the engine to get up to temperature, so you can't kind of fudge it as easily. And you'll notice with loads of the bikes when you go to EICMA and things how big the exhausts are getting. So a lot of it is around the catalytic converter on the back being, needing to be beefy, and also the longevity of it. So it's sensors and stuff in the bike as well that will monitor that over time. But that's one of the reasons. And the other one, sadly, and we mention this a lot, is that even though we love it, and I think it's my favourite over the 800 or 803, it doesn't sell in the same sorts of numbers. For whatever reason, it doesn't hit the market the same, and obviously they're not going to continue with a bike that doesn't sell as well as their other versions. But yeah, I think, what do you feel about that one? I'm assuming quite sad. Were you a big fan of the 1100?
Yeah, I think it stems back to when I was at Ducati UK doing like a media day, and I wanted to make a video of how the 800 compares to the 1100, but I'd never really ridden the 1100, so it was really like a proper first impressions and quite a raw, like, how does it compare, which I think is quite good to film something like that, because it was genuinely like my reaction as to, how different it was. And it just really surprised me, because all of the talk about the 1100 is that it's heavier but not much in the way of like performance benefit, and people like the agility of the Ducati Scrambler and how easy it is to get on with. But I don't know, I really, really liked it just because it felt more substantial. The engine felt a bit torquier. The exhaust note was beefier. You got the twin discs up front, so braking was a little bit better as well. And just that engine has, we talk about air-cooled engines having like soul and character, but I really felt it with that engine. Yeah. I think it's another old Monster engine, isn't it?
I believe so,
Much like the 800.
Yeah, I believe so. So yeah, and it works in the Monster, although I assume the bigger Monsters also don't sell in the same sort of numbers as these smaller ones, because they're kind of entry-level, they're obviously more affordable.
Got you.
So it makes sense to me in that way, but yeah, I think I felt the same as you on that one. And the biggest plus for me was, you're right, all of the other spec is upgraded to match the bigger capacity, but then the engine is faster, but not like, they're not worlds apart.
It's only like 15 horsepower.
Yeah, it's not that much, yeah. So actually, in terms of performance, it doesn't make that much difference, but it does feel a bit stronger. The bike isn't that much heavier, but you get better brakes as a result of it. So I preferred it for that reason as well, because it's got all of the same character, but it's a bit meatier. But then I had an 800, so, money where your mouth is. I didn't buy it either, so I understand. Maybe it just doesn't sell.
That's it, mate. Yeah. And am I going to go and buy one? Probably not. There's loads of bikes I'd like to own. Yeah. But I would say, the bikes that have been pulled from the market recently, like the Triumph Thruxton, that's in its final edition this year. It does make you think, I'd love to have one.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of the same with this as well. Those are two bikes that I've definitely been on eBay looking at, an Auto Trader, recently, just knowing that they're being discontinued. Yeah. I managed to resist the urge, but I do think it's a big shame. But like you say, it's not, it ultimately comes down to business, and you can't keep making a bike at a loss just for the sake of like a handful of people saying they really like it. Yeah. But what I will say is that if anyone thinks it might be something that they'd enjoy, but they just haven't got round to demoing one yet, or, they just fancy one day but haven't quite sampled it. Now's the time, because I think it's kind of underrated. And I've seen so many reviews where people are like, oh, it's not quite as good as the 800 because it's just more cumbersome. And I think it's missing the point. It's not necessarily about being as agile as the 800. In some ways, the extra heft of it and substantialness is kind of what I liked about it. Yeah. And it's not doing the same thing. It's doing something a little bit different. And so, thoroughly a sad day for me. Although, like you say, I guess I should put my money where my mouth is if I really wanted them to keep making one.
I think it's going to be one of those bikes where you see them pop up, but obviously much less frequently than the 800. So in the future, when people are looking to buy one, not saying that it's going to be limited or that you're like it's going to be a future classic or anything for that reason, but there will be less of them. So it kind of takes more attention in that way.
I think I'd be much more likely to buy one used than I would new, and the lowest you can get on Auto Trader, for example, is for a 2020 $6,500, which I think is, obviously it really depends on the bike, but there's quite a few at that sort of $6,500 to $7,000 price point.
It's pretty good. That's not
10
bad.
Bikes there
for Ducati as well. That's pretty good because they tend to hold value reasonably well. But yeah, I think the 800s are usually around 4 to 5. So
there's one here that's got 1,720 miles on it, but it's a 2018. But that's really quite tempting. But anyway, as with any time I buy a motorcycle, it'll end up not getting ridden because we've got this constant flow of press bikes, and then it'll just sit in the garage depreciating.
I can see one right in the background as we speak, in fact, yes.
But sad times. And it's funny because that story flew under the radar a little bit, because I think the main announcement there was the two 800 prototypes, the Scramblery one that looked a bit desert sleddy, and also the Cafe Racer one. Yeah. And that was what they were really pushing. Yes. So it was only for a bit of delving, I suppose, that MCN got this out of them. Sure. And we didn't go on the Friday night where you could do the interviews with the Ducati team. So, it did fly under the radar a little bit that they're discontinuing it. But also, like, manufacturers never really want to say, make a big song and dance.
Interestingly,
a bike being discontinued.
No, of course.
Effectively, that's a failure, isn't it?
Yeah, and you don't want to be, if you're there announcing two bikes or possibly announcing two bikes, you don't also then, that's the focus, and that should be the focus. But there isn't an article about desert sleds, so maybe I'll keep my fingers crossed that they're keeping quiet on that one because they've got one in the works or something. But
maybe
that'll be an exciting introduction or addition to the lineup.
Totally, yeah. You got to think that they'll be bringing back a desert sled at
please.
Some point. But yeah, it doesn't seem like anytime soon.
No, I know.
It's still kind of a modest, small lineup, but it's about to get even smaller. Anyway, moving swiftly on to the next piece, we've also got news from Visor down here that the R1300GS Adventure is due to be launched later this year. Now, it's kind of interesting, mate, because two of the best-selling bikes on the UK market pretty much every month of every year in the large capacity segment. Well, they are. It's not two of. They are pretty much the two best-selling big capacity bikes. The GS and the GS Adventure, the 1250 previous to this. Earlier this year, they launched the R1300GS, but not the Adventure model. Now, the Adventure gets like the huge 30-litre tank, a slightly taller suspension, a bit more off-road biased, and the range on it is absolutely phenomenal. Let me just do the calculations quickly of what a 1300GS would do. Yeah. It's because of the shift cam variable valve timing system in a Boxer Twin. They're actually way more efficient than some of the other big capacity adventure bikes. Oh. If you look at the 1300GS, it will do 4.8 litres per 100 kilometres. A Tiger 1200 will do 5.1 litres per 100 kilometres. So not too bad either.
No, but then it's...
But a Multistrada...
Yeah, go on.
yeah,
go on, mention the thirsty one.
We'll do it in the rally spec, because those are... The reason I've gone for those three bikes is they're the ones that are available with a big 30-litre fuel tank with an emphasis on range. Sure. And the Multistrada V4 Rally will do 6.6 litres per 100 kilometres. So you'll get 4.8, 5.1.
Yeah, I thought Ducati also had variable valve on some of their Multistradas, but maybe I'm wrong on that one.
I think that might be the older ones.
Yeah, the twins,
and some of the Diavos, they did have that. I don't think these ones have variable valve timing.
Thirsty.
Or variable valve lift, and that's why they're I mean, there's probably lots of reasons why they drink fuel. It's basically a superbike engine in a big, heavy adventure bike.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
So, yeah, that would mean that a 30-litre tank would do 625 kilometres if you manage to get that 4.8 litres per 100 kilometres, which is, just for anyone...
In miles, yeah, in the proper...
In miles, 388 miles between stops.
That's really good.
I mean, what do you get on your bike, your Ducati?
I'm comparing it to my car, actually, mate. I wasn't even going to bother trying to compare it to the bike. Yeah. The Ducati will give me about 120, 150.
Yeah. It does sound like an enticing prospect, but it is kind of interesting that they haven't launched it straight away just because they're selling such big numbers. But I think one of the reasons, Visor Down are reporting that there are some weight and top speed figures released for this bike. The top speed, is slightly less than the R1300GS, and the weight is slightly more. So those two things are probably somewhat related. And the reason the weight is realistically going to be slightly more is because of that bigger fuel tank, because they're quoting wet weight. And there's probably a bit more heft if it's a bit taller and more off-road biased as well. So no massive surprises there. That's the main details that have been announced. But I guess one of the reasons that they might be waiting till later this year is because this is surely one of those bikes that's going to get their ASA, or automated shift assist. And it's been announced that that's going to be launched later this year. I think we talked about this in a previous episode, didn't we?
Yes.
The actuator on the clutch and gearbox that's basically going to mean it acts like an automatic motorcycle. A bike like this, mate, with a massive fuel tank, a big old thing, definitely set up for touring. It's probably going to be ideal for a system like that, where, it might just give you a little bit of extra comfort over bigger distances. And also, they did say in the launch materials for ASA, where they made a bit of an announcement about it, that I think it can tie in with some of the radar-enabled rider aids like adaptive cruise control. So if it's having to slow down a bit, then it'll know to knock down the gears in time with the deceleration.
I mean, what do you do at that stage, though? Like, just sit there. I saw a clip of someone the other day, actually, just literally sat back with their arms crossed on a bike. It was a big adventure bike. It might have actually been an Africa Twin, but they doesn't
have radar cruise yet, does it? But... So that's pure skill.
No, they were just risking it, mate. Yeah, that was just it was pure skill. But yeah, they were just sat back, arms crossed, sat against the top box. Didn't quite put their legs up, but they could have done. At that stage with the BMW, that's ideal, mate. I think
it's almost nailed on to be announced with ASA, and I think they are. They also announced, we talked about this, I think, on the podcast as well. They've also announced that for the first time in quite a few years, they're going to be back at EICMA with a stand this year. So... Really, it looks like probably around that period of time is where you're going to see something like that. So, yeah, keep your eyes peeled for anyone who was hoping to buy a 1300GS Adventure sometime soon. But it's a really good point, mate. I know we've talked about this quite a bit recently with Yamaha patenting the automatic MT-07 with the CP2 engine. Honda have done E-clutch recently and had DCT before that. BMW have announced this automated shift assistant. And now we've got KTM... also getting in on the action because they were testing what looks like either a 1290 or maybe a 1390 Super Adventure that's going to come next year at this big enduro race called Erzberg Rodeo in Austria. And this test bike, this prototype, as reported in Cycle World, but they also shared it on their own social media channels as well, KTM, had no clutch lever and it had the up and down triggers on the switchgear. And it also had its own foot shifter as well. So in the same way with DCT on Honda, you can get a replica foot shifter that basically just triggers the electronic up and down shift. It had one of those as well, which kind of makes sense if you are going to ride it aggressively off-road, where you might not want to be thumbing at the buttons while you're hanging on for dear life. So I just don't know where all this demand is coming from. I think we talked about it in previous episodes, right, of like, it seems like quite a few brands are getting involved in this sort of tech. But another one. Yeah. Where is all this demand coming from for automatic motorcycles? I've not spoken to a single person who says they want one.
I mean, it could just be keeping up with the market, right? I mean, it depends. Say you were Yamaha, and you've just seen Honda's been doing it for a while. Then you've seen BMW bringing something out, and then you see KTM are doing it. Would you not get a little bit sort of nervous and itchy feet where you're like, yeah, maybe we should do it as well? Just because, especially with this is their flagship bike as well, right? All of them are doing it on their big boy touring bikes. The ones that they throw everything at. So you don't want to get left behind in the market. And if people are playing top trumps in the car park, as they often will, when you pull up and you're like, oh, has yours got the adaptive cruise control?
This, got that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's going to be one of those, I think. But, I mean, we both ridden DCT. We both got on with it. I probably wouldn't buy one or aim to buy one. I wouldn't mind if, the right circumstances. But it's not on my tick list of things I need. But they do ride well. I mean, it's not a bad option, especially if you get rid of, you've got the lever. So, like you say with the KTM, right? Especially if you can actually, basically all you're doing is just giving your left hand an easy job, right? But your foot can still do the work, and I'm assuming you can still stick it in manual, so you can just dictate the gears through the lever. So
that is the idea, apparently, from what's been seen on it.
Yeah. Easier.
Yeah, it is easier, but I do agree with you. Like, what's left, if you just stick it on cruise and it does everything. I do like tech, and I marvel at riding some of those bikes, and I really enjoy finding out all about it. But I think when push comes to shove, if I'm going out for a motorbike ride, for fun, at least, then I probably enjoy the simpler bikes the more. Like yesterday I had to ride the Svartpillen 401 over to Husky to borrow the 801 because they were putting a few bits on it, different exhaust and stuff before I do my kind of final review with it. And even that, I just found myself like switching off the quick shifter, switching off some of the other rider aids and just trying to enjoy the basics of it on like a decent back road blast. And it was potentially more enjoyable to try and get those shifts nice and smooth than it was to ride with all the stuff on. So yeah, I don't know. It's a bit of a funny one. I do get what you're saying as well. There's that kind of like bragging rights or just the comprehensiveness of features that can sell the bikes. There's also, though, that other part of the market. We were just talking about the Honda E-clutches on the middleweights and the Yamaha CP2s where it's kind of that affordable part. And I get it. Like some people say, if you've got maybe some kind of injury or something like that to your left hand or left foot, then, these are a great option. And I'm all for there being options out there to make it motorcycling easier and more accessible and more fun for everybody. But it's just a surprising rush of companies at the moment all coming out with similar stuff that just seems to have come out of nowhere. Yeah. Like the adaptive cruise and stuff, you've seen it on cars for years, and it just seemed like where the market was going. You saw radars creeping in, they were sort of spied with them, and it just felt like the logical next step. This, though, has just come out of absolutely nowhere as far as I'm concerned. I
mean, you're in trouble if Suzuki start looking. If they bring out a V-Strom with it, then you're like, oh, now everyone's done it. Because those maybe Kawasaki tend to just go on the simpler option and more affordability. Yeah. So if they start knocking on the door, then we'll see.
Well, for something a little bit more simple, mate, let's head over to France, to Wheels and Waves in Biarritz, which is an annual custom motorcycle and surfing festival that runs for a whole week. Honda always do a little bit of a job there in terms of sponsoring or commissioning a whole bunch of custom builds from their dealers and partners and custom shops on a specific platform. So they always contribute a lot of bikes, and they put out a press release with all these different pictures. I thought we'd have a look through them and see what we made of them and see if we can pick out any favorites. And in previous years, it's been the CB1000R, CB650R. They did monkey bikes, I think, or Grom bikes one year. I think they've done Rebel 500s as well. But this year, they've taken the CL500 Scrambler, which was announced last year. So it's a new model for them. And basically, that's the base bike that everybody's got to start from. And then they just see what people can do with it. Now, I think it's an interesting one because from the comments on my video review of it from the launch last year, it seemed like the looks were a little bit divisive and polarizing. Some people thought it looked quite cool. Other people really didn't like it. Well, I mean, what do you reckon, mate?
It's about to get a lot better. I like it. I do dig it. It doesn't excite me, I think, is the simplest way of putting it. And it's similar to the Rebel. I like the Rebel, but again, probably doesn't excite me. It looks a bit sort of clinical. But yeah, it's okay. It's got what I think is it's got a decent platform to build from, which obviously is what we're leading on to here. But it does look like that kind of bike where, for a relatively small budget, you could get it looking quite tasty.
I think there are two changes to it, like that would have made it a bit better looking. Number one is for the line of the tank, if you see below the knee pad there, for that to continue straight all the way to the front, if you know what I mean. So you have just a regular shape of fuel tank. And even if that was just a cover over that part of the frame that sort of angles up there, I think that would have maybe looked a bit better. But look, I'm not a motorcycle designer, so that's just an amateur's opinion. The other one is like the exhaust is quite big and bulky, and I wonder how much of the cat is up in that high mounted position and whether they could have stashed a bit more of it down low so that the actual silencer was a bit slimmer.
Agreed. I think also if you were going to make it an actual kind of scrambler, ideally you want a high pipe as well. I don't know why brands don't do that very often anymore, and there must be a reason for it. I mean, obviously it's got to go under your leg then as well, so there's sort of complications with it. But I think if you've got a scrambler, ideally you just want a high pipe just going the full length parallel to the seat in the tank. So yeah, could have improved it.
Well, I think there are definitely some excellent ideas there, mate, for improving it. But I think it's 16 builders have had a go, or at least there are 16 bikes. And so I thought we'd rattle through them. Probably won't grade them, but just keep one in your mind as maybe your favourite by the end. And we'll start off in the UK with Doble Motorcycles, which I think is over London way, isn't it? I've seen that on licence plates anyway, a lot around there. And this one's called the Poseidon. Yeah. Poseidon or Poseidon? How do you say that, mate?
Poseidon? It's Poseidon.
Okay.
Yeah.
The Poseidon Project, it's called. So obviously a very nautical theme on this one. A bit of sea and waves on the tank and side panels. A bit of sand on the handguards and whatnot. And then what is that seat?
Yeah. There's a boat for a seat. It's a boat. It's clear. Looks like it's got a wing though. It's a boat, but I don't know what, because you can see it's got like the little portholes and is it the buoys?
Oh, the bumper
things
things
as well.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Anyway, keep that one in your mind as a potential favourite. Terra Battuta 500 from Unit Garage in Italy. That's quite a nice little job. I am a bit of a sucker for a skateboard attached to the side of a motorcycle. I like the idea. Yeah. What do they call that with deliveries? It's kind of like final mile deliveries, like electric vehicles are used for it.
Oh, yeah, the last mile. Yeah, final mile, last mile. Yeah.
That's what I think the skateboard is like. You ride the motorbike to some motorcycle parking bay in London, and then if you've got another 500 metres to go and you can't be bothered to walk, just whip the skateboard off and skate the final mile. But that's probably a modest job, I would say. Even looks like they've left the fuel tank paint the same colour. Starato is the next one from Unit Garage. I think actually what they've done that's quite nice on this one is they have made a bit of a shroud for the tank, as I suggested. And I don't think that's from the accessories catalogue. The white high mudguard, the headlights around, and I think the handguards, I think are official Honda accessories, but I think they've made that themselves. And so I admire that because it's living out one of my ideas. Yeah,
they've also changed the, I assume just the springs, not the actual rear suspension, but they've put some yellow springs on there as well. So there's some nice continuity with the colours on that one. It is bright because they've gone with the orange. But yeah, I like that as a simple look.
Silver Surfer is next, mate, and I'll tell you what's happened here. Honda basically took the Rebel 500, which is a cruiser-style bike, and made it into a scrambler called the CL500, and then this builder has turned it back into a cruiser.
Yeah, but with clip-ons. Yeah. Logic. But then, as we've said, right, Logic has no place.
In the custom world.
To be fair, I've contradicted myself a lot. Sometimes I'll say I really want the Logic and sometimes not. But this one not so logical, but it is pretty.
Created by the team at flagship Honda Center dealership in Frankfurt. CL Surfer or Silver Surfer. Next one is Ocean's Track, a bit of a flat tracker. And this one is from France. We always say some of the best custom bikes come from France. Oceane Motos. That's impressive, isn't it? They've gone with the Honda colour scheme, but also the way they transformed the front end and the back of the bike. It looks legit, like a good flat tracker.
Do you know what else as well? That would be a perfect flat tracker, or at least the starter flat tracker, if it was in that class, if everyone was similar sort of horsepower, because obviously you wouldn't want to be sticking that against, 1100s or whatever. To me, so far is my favourite, and France killing it again.
I know what you mean. That would be a fun flat tracker, not too intimidating.
It really would. Yeah, the right sort of size, yeah.
Next up, Moonground from Portugal, from Garonda, Guarda. What's the inspiration there? Moonground. It's a minimalist take on a two-wheeled vehicle ready for any terrain or planet.
Yeah, and it's got Tutankhamun underneath the engine there, I can see. Not a massive fan of pipe wraps anyway, but that one, when you've just wrapped the entire thing, it just highlights it, and that is not a nice exhaust underneath.
It's a bit of a beast, but I do quite like the blocky tyres on it. It sort of gives the CL500 a bit more of a aggressive look, which I think helps because it does maybe not look that scramblery compared to some of the other options on the market. Next up, Irizumi, which is a bike from France again, Starbike Honda. I think that's one of their dealerships, and they say it's a bit of a celestial entity. The intricate artwork on the tank draws people in, and the minimised rear end and high-level exhaust with a single satin muffler and tan seat set this bike apart from its peers. Nice custom job, but probably quite a light treatment on the rest of it.
Simple, yeah.
Next up, Flat Track 500. I think I'm noticing a theme here, mate. Which is flat trackers look pretty good, actually.
Seriously digging the flat trackers. That's the equal with the other one that we saw before. They're my favourite so far.
I actually think I'd be more likely to ride this one because I do like the sort of Honda racing colour scheme, but I think if I was riding a bike day to day, I'd want something that just looked a bit more stealth. So the grey and black, little pop of red on the springs. I think they've put a red air filter on there as well. Looks pretty good. This one's from Anquety Motorsport out of Belgium, and it does get Öhlins rear shocks, a cantilever swing arm. Have they changed the swing arm? Who knows, mate? It looks maybe the same to me, but
tell you what about the swing arm on all these customs. I'm going to say it's not highlighting the bike. When you can see that, you can see how spindly it looks.
It's
obviously
a skinny
it's a small
one,
bike, but it really is skinny. It almost just looks like it's the paddock stand, like it's part of the paddock stand. It's not.
Yeah, it's like a slim steel tube, which you don't see that very often, do you? But I agree, it's surprisingly slim. But then again, it's not exactly laying down loads of power that it needs all this torsional rigidity for, or anything like that. So it's probably ample. I trust the guys at Honda that they made it beefy enough. Enduro 500, bit of a red job. Blocky tyres.
Quite simple again, and that is, I'm assuming, the official Honda accessories for the mudguard.
Some of it, yeah. These are done out of dealers, a lot of them, so they kind of make use of what's available and try and find some other parts and maybe paint them up a bit as well. So it's very similar to the previous sort of competitions that they've run. CL501R, another flat tracker. I don't know. It's maybe not quite as good as I like that Flat Track 500 that's a bit more stealth, but still, it does look good.
Yeah, it's not bad. Again, flat tracker, nice shape. The blocky number plate on the front of the bike, instead of in lieu of a headlight, although obviously this one's still got lights, is a good look for me,
Digger. This is just more like straight up Scrambler. Painted it,
just a digger,
painted the engine. It's not actually a digger. They haven't put a bucket on there.
It's just called a digger. The gold's kind of throwing me off just a tad there on the engine parts, but go the extra effort at least. Yeah, nice official Honda colours, eye-catching.
Cherry Lady. You can guess what that is. It's cherry.
I like it.
You like a cherry lady?
I like a cherry lady. That's good. That's
I don't even know what that means.
It means whatever you want it to mean. The radiator guard looks a little demon tweaks. You know, when someone's kind of got anodized parts of their bike.
You just said you like the cold engine on the other one.
No, I said I don't like it, but it's eye-catching. I like the extra effort to colour these parts, but it's distracting for me. And the same with this one, where maybe just without that radiator colour. But, I didn't build it, so what can I say?
Charade Spirit, another one. Or is that charade?
Ooh.
Do you say charade or charade? I'm finding out a lot about how you pronounce stuff.
It depends on the day, mate, to be honest. I play charades, so if we're playing charades, but I would call something a charade. So yeah, today I'm calling it a Charade Spirit.
Yes.
And is that from France as well? Because I do like that one.
Let's check. But also, you got to say, a lot of these show off the fact that if you do slim down the silencer on this bike, it does help quite a lot, doesn't it? So that looks a little bit leaner at the back. It is from France. How do you know that?
Yeah. Because it looks so good. My God, can someone else please up their game and meet France on this one?
Okay, next up, Bunker Imprint.
I like that a lot.
You've got to give them credit for that, haven't you?
Yeah, you really do. Because obviously, I'm assuming with this whole build, a lot of them have gone with quick and easy in comparison to, I'm assuming, what they can actually put out themselves as a custom shop. So they've gone with fairly simple. This one's probably one of the most involved because they've built that whole front fairing and the bit on the bottom as well. I like the look of that a lot.
The bit on the bottom is also commonly known as a belly pan.
That's one.
And they've done a tailpiece cover, like a passenger seat cover there as well to kind of match in. It looks a bit like the Ducati Cafe Racer we saw at the bike shed, the prototype the other week, doesn't it?
It does.
It's got an air of that about it. But also, beyond what you've said about the bodywork, if you have a little look there, I think they've swapped the front end for the one from a CB500, potentially, or something like that.
Yeah, it's got upside down forks. Yeah,
upside down forks, 17-inch front wheel, which I think the other the Scrambler comes as standard with an 18 or 19. I think it's a 19. A different brake with a bit of a wavy disc there. Road tires. Yeah. It's quite impressive, you got to say.
Yeah,
and it
definitely.
also works definitely. Probably lower handlebars as well there. Oh, they've got those kind of flipped. Do they call them Clubman bars?
I think so, yeah.
So yeah, that's probably going to be one of the bikes that's the most different to ride. Bic ink, a lot going on.
So we've got red and orange for colours. We have
yellow headlight,
quite a slim tail section as well. Yellow headlight. Yeah, it's nice. It's tasteful. It looks like the sort of thing you'd see, not a custom shop, but an actual, Joe Bloggs make themselves, but just really nicely done. So I like that a lot.
Summer vibes with those colours. And then last up, Alpina 500. Woo! This one's good, isn't it?
That is good, yes. They have a fully reworked exhaust system and the high exhaust that I was begging for, and it's also got higher ground clearance as well. So actually, that one looks like you could theoretically scramble it, although you might want some higher bars on it. It's got a brand new headlight. Everything on that looks brand. Actually, even the tank. Do you know what? This one looks like it's got the most changed on it out of all of the bikes we've seen so far, because they've gone the whole hog on that one. They've just basically left the frame.
Yeah, they've got a different... Well, and the engine. And the
engine, of
and
course.
The
The end. Oh, yeah, and of course, my favourite part, the skinny swing arm. But they've also swapped the forks, quite beefy, chunky, upside-down forks as well.
Different headlight, looks like different speedo. And like I say, when you do carry that straight line from the tank through the bike, I mean, it must have been a lot of work, because it looks like they put a different subframe on there and everything. But it does make it look completely different, and I think it's quite a handsome motorcycle, this one. And I actually would say that thin swing arm doesn't look out of place when you've got other similar tubing kind of on show. And the wheels look quite nice as well. I think they've been polished up or painted kind of silver to match, but I think that's fantastic. Anyway, give us your favourite.
Is it boring to say the one we've just seen? Because I think, genuinely, number one would be the Alpina 500. But then if I was giving a shout out to my second place, that might be Bunker Imprint, the Cafe Racer full-fed version. And then third place would be one of the flat trackers, Ocean's Track, So that one there.
Yeah, I think I probably agree. The one that I'd most like to have a go on is the Alpina or Bunker Imprint. The Alpina is from Switzerland, built in cooperation with Meister Engineering.
Yes, Switzerland.
Yeah. Celebrating 50 years of Honda
job.
Switzerland, and it draws on Honda's heritage while referencing details and elements of one of Europe's most beautiful countries. Hey, what? What's Swiss about it?
I don't know, mate. The colour? Who knows?
We need some advice. Anyone who's Swiss, let us know in the comments. But it stands out from the competition with its CB-style fuel tank, stripped subframe, and minimalist bench seat. Very well done. Like that one a lot. But also, well done to everyone who had a go at that. It's always interesting to see just how much you can do with a fairly sort of bog standard bike like that. And also, you got to say, shout out to Honda for supporting an event like that, because Honda don't necessarily have a reputation for being the most customized bikes. It's not exactly like the Bonneville range or something like that. But has to be said, they've done a good job there of getting all these bikes out, and they do it every single year. So it's cool to see them supporting something that is a very sort of cultural part of motorcycling. Right, mate, time for comment of the week, and I'm excited about this one. I think I said at the beginning, because a couple of episodes back we talked about some of the UK's police forces on bikes swapping for Tenere 700 so that they can do a bit of chasing off-road. And we got into a conversation about the best police bikes in the world. And then actually a few people got back to us with some insight into how police motorcycles vary across the globe. Now, this one shocked me, mate, but Fun with AJ says, just a note on the US, the majority of local PD and more highway patrol now use BMW R1250s. Those Harleys you listed are actually a rarity now, which I commented back saying, don't believe everything you see in films then, isn't it?
Basically, yeah. But I mean, in films, they're going to put that in there because it's the one, it just visually looks better for your film, I think.
The Harley.
And you want some Americana in there. If it's based in America, you want it to look obviously like America. So I understand that, and it is a shame because I would like to see that. I'd imagine people want photos with them now as well. If they are a little rarer, you'd imagine that tourists would be like, "Oh, can I take a photo on your bike?"
Crime is up because police are just queuing for selfies.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Over here in the Netherlands says Diet Zedness. The police also ride on R1250 RTs. Oh, yeah, and maybe it's a bit boring that everyone all over the world just rides RTs. But he does say in tight city centres, you'll see Tracer 700s, which I guess makes sense. A little bit more nimble, a bit more nippy. Sure. So I don't mind that. And then Josiah Dixon 894 says, in New Zealand, our police have recently been equipped with Tracer 9 GTs, which I reckon is a pretty solid choice. And actually, I'd agree that is a nice balance between the Tracer 7 and something quite big like the R1250 RT. It's got a bit of nimbleness, but it's also still really quite fast with that inline triple. It might be a good shout.
It's got the legs. I mean, you need that, don't you? Because, you don't want something outrunning you. And it depends. If you were chasing other bikes and you've got some 1000cc sports bike, then you're going to need something with legs on it, and that has.
Well, if you're planning to outrun the police, then you might not want to go to Finland, because Inga Maraukola 9937 says that in Finland they go with the Kawasaki H2 as well as the Yamaha Tracer 9s. I mean,
but across the board though, or is that like they've got one or two? Because they've definitely got some S1000s here. Yeah, standard issue. I remember seeing in the bike shed we had an S1000 that the police had spec'd up as well, right? RR. So they're sporty bike, but they don't use that on a daily. It was kind of a promotional thing, maybe to scare the motorcycle thieves. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It looks kind of legit.
But if they're all rolling around on H2s, then that is
I'm going to have to send you a link because there's a picture set here that I found through Reddit. If you look at the cockpit photo, the level of equipment in there looks pretty legit. Like, it's not like they've just done it for the cameras and just got a bloke to ride around on one with some police stickers on to scare everybody. It is fully rigged up for police work. You've got a big screen, you've got all the comm stuff. Yeah. It's got all the stuff in the side cases, whatever those boxes do. It's got a printer, it says, in one of the last photos.
Just in case you need some admin doing.
They print out some tickets. So it maybe looks legit. And that is the H2, I think, SX SE, which is the top spec. It's like over 20 grand and it gets the works, including active cruise and stuff like that and blind spot warnings. But honestly, even the very comprehensive and feature-filled TFT display that you get on that bike shrinks in the cockpit when it's kind of surrounded with all these buttons. It's got more buttons than like a Concorde cockpit. That, look, if you get one of those as soon as you sign up for Finnish police force, then I'm there, mate. Put me down. That looks like fun. Jan Park Holm says the Danish police force has been replacing their FJR 1300s and switching to the Multistrada V4S, which we did say we thought would be an ideal choice. And this shows how much we know, because he says a lot of them are not being used and have internal restrictions due to the brakes not being up to the task. Rumour says they're looking into getting out of the 7-year contract due to these issues, which really surprises me because it's literally got like top spec Brembos on those, the Multistrada V4S. And in my experience, they felt pretty good. But maybe with all the weight on there, not the police officer, the gear, they fade a bit.
Yeah. Maybe that does surprise me, though. Really surprises me. Like you say, it is top spec. If its brakes can't cope with whatever extra sort of scanners, as we've just seen, the amount of kit you have to layer on top of that. And maybe that's the reason, and maybe the BMWs wear it better. But interesting.
Yeah, very interesting indeed. I'm also going to give a shout out to, I'm not going to say his full name, just say AJ, who slid into my DMs on Instagram, who says he just watched the podcast episode and he is one of the off-road police motorcyclists for West Yorkshire who are the ones trading in their, they've ordered the Tenere 700s, but currently use CRFs, which I think we talked about. And he says they're amazing bikes for what we use them for. So I said, keep us posted on how the Tenere compares when they do show up. Anyway, on to Bike of the Week. And this one, I don't know if you've seen this in the news, but basically there's a company in China called Great Wall Motor, and they predominantly make cars, but it's been reported that they're looking into making their first ever motorcycle, and it's not like they're just dabbling with a simple little, borrowed an engine from someone and just knocked a chassis together. This thing is a behemoth. So it's meant to rival the Goldwing, and it's called the S2000 GL and ST. And when I say rival the Goldwing, it's gone one further, because whereas you get a flat 6 engine, and I think we can all agree that 6 cylinders is probably enough for a motorcycle.
Yeah.
This particular bike gets 8 cylinders. I think they've literally looked at a Goldwing and gone, what's better than a 6-cylinder 1.8 litre bike? A 2 litre flat 8. I mean, could this float your boat? Or is this a step too far? And that is too many cylinders.
So I mean, where do you stop? I mean, I've got a 48-cylinder Kawasaki just begging to one up them even. Yeah, I rode the Goldwing all too briefly, so I've got very limited kind of experience on it. You know much better than me how that thing rides. But it could. I mean, I can't ever see myself owning a bike of that scale, but it's very impressive. I like the looks of it. I mean, it looks fairly impractical, but as the Goldwing was. But then I think, having ridden that, you actually would say that it's got decent road manners, although it's obviously not got the same sort of nimble handling of smaller bikes. But
totally.
Look how far back the handlebars are on that thing. They're like sat in the tank.
You know what, though? I think that might be one of the reasons that they do feel quite manageable, these big bikes, is because the sort of geometry is very relaxed and cruisery. And that means that despite it being quite big and heavy, they do feel quite stable and planted. And so maybe that's part of the reason. And actually, if you look at a Goldwing side-on, the riding position is kind of similar. In fact, there's that rolling chassis picture of the Goldwing. You can see from that picture just how slack everything is. Everything's just angled back, isn't it? Massively. And the bars actually do come in sort of, well behind the front wheel, don't they? Sort of halfway between.
Yeah, they really do. It's quite cool to see that, actually, to see it all stripped back. It looks almost simple when you look at it like that, but then it has literally nothing there. It's just a frame and wheels.
There are some shots with the engine in as well, which I'll have to dig out and we'll put on the screen. With the engine in, it actually looks like a really sick custom bobber cruiser with a bit of a futuristic edge. But yeah, this GWM or Great Wall motor does look like it would be a very direct competitor, and I wonder if it would undercut it on price. I mean, who knows if they'd even be sold over here as well. It isn't the first 8-cylinder bike though. Did we mention that Moto Guzzi V8? It's like one of the ones in their museum, and the paint job, which is sort of green, silver and brown, actually influenced those recent anniversary editions that they did of the V100. But it was one of their GP bikes, and that was an 8-cylinder as well. So, you know, if Moto Guzzi think it's a good idea and Great Wall Motor think it's a good idea, then maybe it is a good idea, mate, and we should see more of them. Yeah.
I mean, the more cylinders, the better. Like I said, I will refer you back to the 48-cylinder Kawasaki until we get there. That's the limit, I think. Also, this would be a flat 8 though, rather than being a V8.
I don't care how they're arranged, mate. Sorry, I think it's just it's almost like the resistance movement to electric bikes. People are just putting more and more cylinders in there. And anyway, I think that just about wraps it up for today. A massive thanks to everybody for listening. As always, you can listen on your favourite podcasting platform if you just want to hear the audio. But of course, there's some great visuals to accompany some of these bikes, along with all those customs that we just mentioned. So do check out the YouTube channel. If you search for Full Tank Motorcycle Podcast on YouTube, you should easily locate it. Leave us a comment as well and let us know what you think of the bikes this week. Of course, we'll be pulling out our favourites for Comment of the Week next week. Once again, a massive thanks for your support, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.